Okay, good afternoon. Our topic for the group presentation was the economic debate of should college athletes be paid, really looking at a study of the money in college athletics. So as our topic, we kind of went through and we looked at the pros and cons for both if college athletes should be paid and how should they be paid, affecting all kinds of realms at a university level in the economy. Should the government be involved and things like that? California recently passed the Fair Pay to Play Act, which is the first um, kind of act similar to this, and it's for in the state of California that will take effect in January 2023. So what this says is that it's illegal for California colleges to deny student athletes the opportunity to gain compensation for use of their names, images, or likeliness. It's also saying that the athletes have the ability to gain profit for the identity. The college won't pay them, but they can get paid for their identity, which goes into video games, promotional material, apparel, anything that the NCAA or anyone else is using their name and who they are as a player to gain compensation. So this is really the first kind of act of this in college sports that just happened, and something that's really going to take effect on athletics, the structure of athletics and the financial structure of that, and the effect it will have in California on the economy. So going off of that, we went into the pros of if college athletes should be paid or not.
Yes, so beginning with the pros, we looked at it from the athletic standpoint. The CNBC talked about how the NCAA makes a profit off of, say, the NCAA tournament and all of the games that college athletes play, and they make profits, therefore, off of their name and skills, while the athletes don't believe that they make a profit at all, and that for the sake of them using their names and likenesses that they should make a profit. In addition, College Pulse did a survey that polled athletes, and 60% of those polled said that the salary should be paid to all athletes, and others had said that it should only be paid to the sports and athletes that bring in a profit. And so there's definitely a debate there as to, even if we were to pay athletes, who actually deserves to be paid based on revenue of certain sports.
And with that, the NCAA exploits student athletes by not paying them. In 2016, it is said that the NCAA has made a profit of $995.9 million US dollars. That would have been more than enough to compensate players for their time of playing, practicing, traveling, condition, and etc. In an article written by former college athlete O.J. Singh at Penn State, in 2019, the opportunity cost for the time spent training in exchange for the waiver of crippling debt cannot be offset by a work-study job that pays minimum wage minus taxes. The economic value of scholarships is greater than what many students will make working a regular job. And the opportunity cost for time spent in training in exchange for the waiver of the crippling debt of college education cannot be offset by a work-study job that pays minimum wage minus taxes. Therefore, the dollar amount of scholarships makes up for the amount of labor the athletes put in.
So going off this, with these pros, the main argument for if college athletes should be paid or not is the fact that someone else is profiting off their identity, and they're the ones doing the work, and they're the ones putting in the long hours of practice and going to the games and participating in all of the work they put in, almost representing a job of some sort. They're putting in the hours to their job, but they're not getting paid for it, except they're expected to show up and do well at what they're doing in hopes of, if they want, someday entering into the professional sports league. But somebody else is currently profiting off of that. So now we're going to move into the cons of college athletes being paid and if they should or not.
So based on the last word on pro basketball, it said that the big D1 schools based on pay. The big D1 schools would start getting bigger because they bring in more money than the smaller D1 schools, so it wouldn't be fair for the smaller D1 schools and the D3 and D2 schools to if this act comes in because they wouldn't have the money that's coming in as a D1 schools. And this would also cause a monopoly effect because of the bigger schools would take over comparing and also for the top tier players, they would also get a lot more and they would get a lot more like scholarships from other schools because they're the ones that are bringing in the money other than the smaller players. And that would also cause the smaller players that are barely getting into these D1 schools to kind of fall off a little bit because they are not bringing in the money as the top tier players are. And with that said, also football and men's basketball are the only two players that make a profit at a college level. So that also would cause the college to kind of fall off a bit money wise because those two, if they have to pay players of all sports, that would also cause because if you only have football and men's basketball bringing in money, that would also cause less for college athletics to keep on going. And this would also be worse off for coaches as well because they'd have to take a pay cut to transfer that over to the players. Because Spurs basketball coach Popovich has only 4.7% of the revenue of the Spurs dynasty, and this is all based on the last word on pro basketball.
And so, with that being said, if we base our argument on pure compensation of labor, then we would have to talk about the economic value of an athlete's labor in comparison with alternatives. According to a DP article from 2019, the average out-of-state tuition for the school year of 2018 and 2019 are $21,629 for public school and $35,676 for private school. So an athlete on a full ride scholarship at Duke, which is a basketball powerhouse, will provide roughly $235,000 for a top-notch education, which would be, in my opinion, more than enough of worthy compensation for putting in several years and hours of hard work into becoming a player with the skills and high enough caliber to be recruited by Duke in the first place.
So another article from the DP, separate from the one Brenda just referenced, talks about it's not about whether we should pay college athletes, but how. And it really dives into if we're going to pay college athletes, how are we going to make sure each sport is paid equally? Are you going to pay track and field the same as you were going to pay men's basketball? And I know Adrienne referenced a stat in the last word on pro basketball where only football and men's basketball bring in the profit for the college level. So just going off of how are we going to do that? Where are we going to find the money? Because not all sports also give the same scholarships. Some sports will give more scholarships than others based off tuition. Are we going to cover your full tuition or your partial tuition? And taking a look at that. And there's really no answer yet on the field of how would we pay for this if we're actually going to pay our student athletes a salary rather than letting them gain profit from the use of their name.
And going off of that as well, college athletes are first off students, and a lot of times this plays into would this allow them to still focus on the academics that they are at college for, or would a salary push college students further from their academics and lead them to be more focused on what their professional lives as athletes could look like earlier on? Mark Emmert, the NCAA president, says that college athletics is about college students playing other college students, not employees playing employees. And so once you add in a salary, basically he was saying that you add a whole nother part in as far as how do we treat one another and how do we see ourselves as college athletes and specifically as college employees.
So then kind of piggybacking off of that, with the cons of this, the NCAA has been worried that the prospect of a patchwork of the laws, and they fear that it would undermine rules that apply to colleges nationwide, with conferences and national championship contenders coming from many different states. And that's like a direct quote from New York Times, the article. So there is that debate in there if they use the government to intervene to fund it, if to pay the athletes, if adding Congress could change the business model of college sports and the profit structure of that and how it comes to play, whether that is a pro. It's more than likely going to be a con due to that business model aspect and how they determine how to pay the college students.
We also were discussing that there is a different point as far as how would you value people's positions within the sports that they're in. So for example, not necessarily as a pro or con, but in general, if you have a football player that plays quarterback versus a punter, how would you assess what they should earn salary-wise based on popularity, based on playing time, or in the situation of basketball, you also have like different positions there where you have the point guard and you have the post, and which one based on their likeness as well as their name and even their position would earn more, or are you going to have a rate that you basically would be paying athletes in said sport, whether it be basketball, football, soccer, and would it be worth it?
So also another point that's not a pro or con. These players are also getting a scholarship, which is free tuition. And they also are getting a lot of other free stuff with this, which could cause if their wages are going to increase, this could also decrease the benefits. So maybe less scholarship money for tuition, or less clothing, or just less benefits in general.
So as we were doing this, we were talking about the economic analysis at the end, and basically we were realizing that it's harder to come up with pros in an economic debate like this when it's only been implemented in like California's only started a Fair Play Act, and this is the only place we can like assess the actual effects of bringing something into play. But also we have to recognize that students would be paid for their name and time, but it would affect how the athletics gain profit and the profit structure itself of athletics. And so even like how they're allotting scholarships and benefits, basically the wonder is, would we continue to pay athletes certain scholarships, or would be for their academics, or would we be paying them more of a salary? And so a lot of that hasn't like been hashed out yet, and that can affect how this is viewed in a positive light. And so we had one last word from Pro Basketball, a direct quote that said basically, in all, the economic and logistical impact of paying college athletes suggests that it is not worth it. If folks truly want to see college athletes receive wages, there should be a motivation to organize and collectively bargain. Assuming they gain the right to unionize, college athletes should then organize to put pressure on the NCAA. And so we thank you for your time today listening to our presentation on should college athletes be paid.